Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm Annette Richmond, and welcome to the Smarter Career Moves LinkedIn Live show. So excited to be here this morning for me and to have Joseph as my guest. Now, I met you a few months ago when you joined me on the Trend Talk show, where we had a panel discussion about, current trends and what's coming and what's next. And I'm so excited to have you back with me today. So for those who don't know you, please tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
Well, thank you so much for having me back, and that it's really great to continue our conversation. I feel like we're just picking up where we left off, and this time we get to have a one-on-one, which is really nice. And I'm happy to be with all of your guests who are watching live, and will see the recording later. So, as for me, I'm Joseph Rosenfeld. I am an executive presence strategist, and I work with top lawyers and leaders who, in spite of their success, lack a certain confidence. It's almost like the secret that nobody wants to talk about. And part of the reason that they come to work with me is because they believe that working on developing a stronger sense of presence will help to improve confidence and make life happier on the daily. So that's why I'm here.
Well, in honor, as I mentioned before we went live, in honor of the holiday and your presence, I kind of glitzed up a little bit myself. And, you know, I want to obviously talk to you about professional attire and, what that means, et cetera. But before we get started, if you can, I know what you wear, what we wear contributes to our presence. But before we get into talking about the clothes, can you just clarify a little bit the whole idea of what is presence?
Well, I would define it as having a certain kind of gravitas, which I consider taking oneself seriously enough, that even if you want to crack jokes, you do it in the way that is respectful of self and respectful of those around you who are your audience at the time. Um, and I think that there are several different aspects to creating an executive presence that the clothing can help to um, emulate, things like charisma or being incisive, maintaining composure, being succinct, which I'll just say is probably my weak spot. Ha- Having confidence, which, by the way, everybody needs to understand that this is a come and go situation. We're always on a wave of higher confidence, lower confidence. It's something to work on, as well as relatability, which I'm demonstrating just by talking and sharing my own issues around presence. Right, with that, if I can be relatable, you're going to believe me, and you're going to see yourself in me. And if anyone in your audience and I were also having this conversation, I would be seeing myself in them.
Hmm.
And of course, credibility. So when you look at these 7 different factors that play a role into building executive presence, the way that you show up has a lot to do with how how your presence comes across to people. Um, Truly, are you relatable? Do you look like you have confidence? Do you have composure? Your outfit can telegraph a message of succinctness or not. And even for someone like me, who is kind of verbose. I can tone down a look to help ground me and help me achieve succinctness, at least in silence, the nonverbal.
Okay, so I do want to say a quick hello to Sarah, my friend who is joining us from across the pond, I guess, as they say. So lovely to see you here this morning for us, Sarah. I love what you said about it sort of coming and going because there's a lot of talk about imposter syndrome. And I kind of feel like if you never have imposter syndrome, then there's something lacking because, we all have that from time to time. Um, and you know, when you're talking about presence and clothing and things like that, um, professional attire has really shifted over the last, I would say, 10 years. When I first started working in corporate, which is, way more than 10 years ago, it was kind of, jacket and tie for men, or maybe a little casual, just the jacket, and women were wearing women's suits. And it was just very, very different. And today, um, there's a lot more flexibility for both men and women. And I know you work with male and female clients. So if you can talk a little bit about kind of, where we are today with the idea of professional and what that means today as far as, attire goes.
Well, this is a very interesting aspect to the whole thing because I feel as though professionals of any gender identity get typecast um, into certain roles and expectations of how to show up. And on LinkedIn the other day, I actually posted up a letter that I composed to Vanessa Friedman, who's the fashion critic and style editor of the New York Times, um, which she loved. And it speaks to exactly what we're talking about without exactly getting into the specifics of, the pieces per se that an individual might wear. At the Deal Book Summit hosted by the New York Times as well, I took note of the fact that, of course, most of the people who were guests were men, Janet Yellen being a standout uh, example of a female in power who showed up looking the way she does. But what I noticed is not to, push the ladies off to the side by any means.
Mm-hmm.
The examples happen to be largely male. And what I found was that the anyone who was a politician showed up looking like a politician, meaning suit and shirt and tie. And
Mm-hmm.
then you had somebody like Larry Fink, who is the CEO of BlackRock, large, huge investment company, who showed up in a suit with no tie. And the looks just kind of changed a little bit from there, all the way to Zuckerberg, who beamed in wearing a very fitted t-shirt, probably a Brunello Cucinelli t-shirt, made for him. And then there was Sam Bankman-Fried with the complete cluster F, what, hair, and the slovenly T-shirt. And this guy's really gone down in a pile of disgrace now because he basically lost billions of dollars of invested funds, and customers have lost their shirts and all this stuff. So I think that what I'm driving at here is that there seem to be, the tech titan types that, the thing to do is a t-shirt. If
Mm-hmm.
you're a Wall Streeter, maybe now it's, a good opportunity to loosen up the tie. And for the ladies, if you're looking at that, you could think, oh, I could do something that's a little bit loosened up as well if I'm a Wall Street lady. That whole idea seems to be where things have gone. But I'm concerned about this, Annette, because I think that this creates a low common denominator or a race to the bottom that
Mm.
I am concerned about. And I'll end on this one other thing, which is, and the other important piece to this, which is this. Let's say that everybody buys into this kind of siloed idea. Well, if you're a techie, you dress like this. If you're a politician, you dress like this. If you're a finance person, you dress like that. Well, there's no room for individuality in that case.
Hmm.
What's happening is everything is like a uniform,
Yeah.
and the iconoclastic idea of Silicon Valley was, to eschew uniformity, you can be an individual, and yet everybody is trying to dress, if not to impress, just to fit in and be with, the bros and the bro culture, which is disgusting, and all this. So it's just, it's fascinating, and I think that what I'm calling for is for true individuality, and that a person should really be able to show up as is befitting of their role and position, of their higher and better selves, and that we all have an opportunity to step it up a notch. Does not have to mean about being formal, but it definitely has to do with being appropriate for the time and place and all that stuff. And some people from the Deal Book Summit, as the example is, because it's public and anybody can go back and check out what we're talking about if they're interested. So that's why it's a good example. Some people absolutely fail to rise to the occasion of the moment.
Hmm. Yeah. And one thing I just want, you to clarify as well is, when you're looking at someone, in tech who's a, heavy hitter in tech, or you're watching a show like Billions or something, and you see the main character coming in a t-shirt and hoodie. That's not like the t-shirt and hoodie that I'm going to be buying at my local department store. That's
Well,
a whole other thing.
yeah, if you were to walk up and down the hallways of offices on Sand Hill Road in Silicon Valley, where it's famously the home to a lot of the big VC companies in
Hmm.
America, um, those people are, running to Stanford Shopping Center and they're buying, Loro Piana cashmere hoodies and things of that nature. They're making investment worthy decisions, but they're doing it with a taste of luxury, a taste of comfort, and I think that even if you're not buying Xenia cashmere overshirts for $2,000, which I think are fabulous if you can afford them, um, I think that there are plenty of other wonderful opportunities out there where you can not mimic them, but you can find your own way,
Hmm.
based on your own budget and based on your own values around how you see clothing fitting in as being an important aspect to the joy of your life.
Yeah. No, obviously, not in my budget, but I'd like to, if you can share, and I know you can, if you will share, I should say, some sort of, tips, techniques, strategy for people who are maybe like me, who are, if people who are service providers like me, and for people who are in corporate who want to um, you know be professional and have that presence without necessarily fitting into a particular category.
So I think the first most important thing is to think about your own qualities, traits, and characteristics. And not only to think about who you are in the present moment, like a snapshot, that's helpful, but to think ahead, who do you want to be? Who do you want to become? If you have something to work towards, it's it's a piece of encouragement around how you show up. It's a piece of encouragement about your presence and therefore around your personal style. And I'll liken it to this for anyone who might doubt what I'm talking about here. Think about when you're when for any of us who are a little bit older now and have families, think about when you were young and maybe just getting married and before you had kids and you and your spouse bought a house and you moved into the house knowing that it was too big for you right now, but that you had a plan. That's a vision. I'm
Mhm.
encouraging that what your wardrobe is just like moving into your new house. You haven't gotten the role that you want to be at yet, or maybe you even are at that role, but you haven't really made your mark or left a legacy yet. If you could dress a certain way based on your own qualities, traits, and characteristics of present mind, but also a future self, that would be a great way to really begin to envision what kinds of looks would that be like. So an absurd example would be, well, right now I'm a flip-flops person when it comes to footwear, but if you think about your future self and showing up as your better sense of self for that role that you really want to have, um, maybe you're going to end up having like a very cool pair of boots. And that's going to be like spring, summer, winter, fall. That's going to be, uh, kind of like one of your classic signature things. Even Stevie Nicks, she sang, "Because I wear boots all summer long." I think, when you create a signature for yourself, then that's just what you do. So that's an absurd example, but it's a great one at the same time because it really illustrates the point. So that's about qualities, traits, and characteristics and current and future self. I would also add that thinking about the colors that most enhance you is a very important thing to do. The psychology of color cannot be underestimated. If you really want people to stop and pay attention to you, not necessarily from far across the room, but in conversational space, or if you're giving a public address and there's a camera on you, and then the image of you is projected onto a screen where people can see your face and what you are wearing, at least close to your face.
Mhm.
I highly recommend repeating your eye color. It creates elegance in an outfit. I believe that the eyes are the windows to the soul. I think that there is a divine reason why we're all created exactly the way that we are. I would like to say that we're perfect, if imperfectly perfect. But given that, we have natural assets that can suggest so many things um, to one another about ourselves. And I think that we know these things actually about one another when we stop and really look at one another. But most people are unable to articulate what it is that we sense about one another, but it's a feeling, and I describe that feeling as being um, faster than fluency. It's a feeling. It's almost an ephemeral thing. It could come and go as well, but if somebody understood that, for example, my eyes, to use myself as an example, are hazel, um, but they have just enough brown in them that I could, on a driver's license, it's going to say hazel. If I could say it on my driver's license, if the option was available, I would describe them as sage. I have healing eyes. When I see somebody, I have the ability to see them in a healing kind of a way, and I can help people to heal. And I'm not unique. other people with sagey colored eyes could essentially do the same thing. We have that same capability. It's a gift. But anyone else who has, brown eyes or blue eyes or different colored green eyes, what you name it, we all are imbued with gifts. And I would say that our eyes telegraph some of that. So if you could repeat that color on the body, you're helping other people to get what you are all about. And wouldn't it be amazing if you actually knew what, like what your own coloring was telling was telling the world about you? If you could understand how your outside is a reflection of what's going on um, inside of yourself, think about how personally empowering that would be. You would never deviate off the colors that really emanate your best sense of self.
Well, that is certainly very interesting, and you know, um, I, I spoke with you a little bit about this before we came live, and I know I talked about this when we were on the Trend Talk show, I guess several weeks ago now. Is that I tend to wear black a lot, and I wear it because uh, it's consistent. If I am live and I am the host, I am always wearing a black top. It helps just maintain consistency. If I'm a guest on somebody else's show, I wear something, something different. But I think that also allows for people to not, if they're looking at a replay, they don't know necessarily, oh, it was summer or something like that. And so I do that. And I guess it's kind of a signature for me that I do that. So, and I don't think that idea of the boots is crazy at all. I mean, I think having that consistency can really help. But I also I want to ask you kind of a twofold question, and part of it is how clothing can, help build your confidence. And second, though, I also want to ask you that whole idea of, the flip flops and the techies in their t-shirts and stuff. Um, I mean, does that work if you're not at that level? I mean, if you are a titan, I'm guessing you can wear whatever you want and command the same respect, um, whatever. Whereas someone who is not in that at that level cannot. So correct me if I'm wrong, and talk a little bit about the confidence factor.
Well, confidence is very much about being comfortable in your own skin and being at ease. Um, I think one of the things that people conflate about comfort is, well, I'm very comfortable in my sweats, or I'm very comfortable in not sweats, but roomy, baggy clothes. The issue here is if your body requires roominess, do that. But I think honoring your body and honoring um, the space that you're in when you're meeting with people and what the point of the confab is all about is very important. We all have messages that we want to convey to the world around us. Um, and I think confidence to me, like, I think that you show up and you look confident because black makes you comfortable. It's not even about the size of your clothes. It's the constancy and the consistency of it makes your life easier, and you can put something on that's nice or nice enough, whatever, and no judgment, of course. And you're good to go. Throw some fun jewelry on. You've got your great specs. You're blonde, so looking high contrast between blonde and fair skin and black creates some dramatic effect. You create a powerful presence for yourself that way. Bing, bam, boom. Not everybody has your coloring, so other, results for one individual are not guaranteed for another to follow the same formula. Um, but I think that's an example of how one can be confident. Now, on the extreme of all this with people who are the Titan types, and those of us who think that we could emulate them. And there are a lot of us that think, well, if so and so can show up dressed like that, I sure as hell can. Um, there is an inherent problem with people at the tippy top who show up looking that way, which is they have no deference to anybody. Um, and they absolutely have an ego issue. Um, and quite frankly, to some degree, may also lack a kind of confidence in themselves that if you show up in such a way where um, you're, I, let's put it this way, using the case of Zuckerberg, because he's a great example,
Mm-hmm.
he wore something, a smart looking t-shirt, as I mentioned. Um, and I think that that's his attempt to look democratized, like, he's just one of everybody else, but he's not.
Mm-hmm.
And he's also taking tremendously high risks right now with his company. They're under a tremendous amount of scrutiny. They are doing a lot of lobbying. And the investment that he's making into the metaverse is so tremendous that it's been a real drag on the valuation of the business and his own personal net worth. He's still super wealthy, but that's not relatable for most people. And he's trying to look kind of relatable, but I don't even think that he's trying to look relatable. I think that he's just trying to not think about his style or his appearance at all because, like I hear from lots of people at his level, they have too many other things to think about and they don't want to exercise brain power to think about something as perhaps mundane at
Mm-hmm.
in their way of thinking about things as their appearance or their style or their image or their presence. And I think that's a big problem because in the end it really can reveal a weakness, and we're seeing that play out in his case, in SBF's case lately, and even people who are facing business or political challenges. um, it's you can look at somebody and actually kind of read the tea leaves based on how somebody is showing up. On the flip of that, you can also have people who are really good at hoodwinking. They're so super polished, but inside they're like criminals. I don't know. It just, we have to really be careful about all the things around appearance, but it does matter. It helps to create in a healthy way with your, let's assume all of us who are participating in this conversation are upstanding people. How we convey that kind of upstandingness towards one another is a kind of deference, which I come back to that original point. I think that's part of having an executive presence. I love the fact that you showed up looking this way because we talked about it offline before we went live that some of the bedazzledness was around the holidays and you wanted to look nice for me and of course for your audience, and I appreciate that because that kind of shows some respect and some deference. I'm sitting at home as well. I put on a sport coat for the conversation because that's how I feel comfortable presenting myself. And it's not inauthentic by any means, even though I'm sitting at home in my special space. This is where I work. It's professional, but I'm also relaxed enough at the
Mm-hmm.
same time. I think we can all do that. It's not that hard, but we have to make an effort and we have to see that this is comfort. This is confidence. It is one and the same. It is about ease.
Yeah. Yeah, that was great. So I learned a lot. I'll be watching this again. It's you know And you read me really well because I am very low key and easygoing. I have my hair cut so that it can air dry and I don't have to play around with it. I don't want to be bothered really. I like to be, I want to look good, or as you say, good enough, but I don't want to have to take a lot of time with it. So I love that. And obviously, you must be great with your clients because you just look at them and read them, and it must be it must be so helpful for them. Now we have talked about a lot of different things. We're nearing our sort of our end time here. Um, I always ask my guests for one sort of final thought. If there's something that you think that it's important to share, be great for people to know that we haven't discussed. If you can share that now, and also let people know how they can connect with you.
Ooh, well, I think all of this comes down to just one thing: self-respect. If you show up for yourself, and however you do, and that works for you, that is you thinking about your own sense of self-respect. And at that, I would also challenge you to use thinking about yourself and your own sense of self-respect to raise the bar, to not reduce ourselves to the lowest common denominator of ourselves. Um, we don't always have to be, flying at 40,000 feet. And every airplane comes down to land and refuels before it goes back up. But there is a great way to create altitude within ourselves. Uh, and it has to do with self-respect and wanting more for ourselves and wanting to deliver more for the people around us, whether it's our families or people that we are dealing with in business. They deserve the best of us, and we deserve to give that to ourselves first before we give that to somebody else. So that's just a final word that I think encapsulates a lot of my philosophy, which is really grounded in self-respect.
I love that. And where can people find you? How can they connect with you? Are you open to connecting on LinkedIn?
I sure am. On LinkedIn, you can find me as Joseph Rosenfeld. And I have a website that's very easy to get to because it's just my name, josephrosenfeld.com. You can also check out what I'm doing on Instagram if you're interested in seeing some of my work and personal life come together there. I put up some things around my travels and some of my work things as well. It's a little more personal for me over there. So however you'd like to connect is great with me.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you will come back and we can continue this conversation because I have so many other things that I wanted to ask you and talk about. So this has been a delight. Thank you to everyone. I've seen some people sending, hearts and applause in the audience. So thanks so much for being here. Please say hello in the comments if you're watching us live or in the replay. So have a great rest of your day.